Hello friends, today we'll start with the first topic that is mentioned in the syllabus. The topic name is modernity and social changes in Europe and emergence of sociology. Now, from the topic's name itself, you can understand what we're going to cover in this particular session. If you look at the topic, you can basically divide it into two parts. The first part talks about modernity and social changes in Europe and how these things are leading to emergence of sociology. So this is what we are going to study. How sociology is emerging as a discipline as a result of certain changes which is taking part in certain places of the world. So which is this part? This part is basically referring to Europe. There were some changes in the society in Europe, and as a result of which, certain developments were there, which is leading to emergence of sociology. At some point of time, sociology was not a separate discipline. It is emerging as a consequence of these changes. So what we will do is, we'll understand what were the social conditions of Europe at this point of time, what were the major changes that took place, some of the major developments, and how these developments are impacting society, and how this is leading to formation of sociology as a discipline. So main concept here is, there are certain ideas which emerge out of the social context. Here also it is the same thing. Because of the prevailing social conditions, some new ideas emerged, and they are leading to formation of a new discipline. So we'll understand what were these social conditions, what was the social context which is leading to development of these ideas. Now, on the screen, you can see some of the most important developments at this period of time. Some of these things that are mentioned here, you also might be aware of these things. You might have heard of these things in your preparation for general studies also. You might have come across these things. Maybe when you're studying about world history, you will have seen some of these things. Maybe when you're studying about economics, some of the things you might have read about. So we'll look at them one by one. And also, among these certain terms we'll find out, we'll come across some terms, we will discuss these terms in details as well. What kind of society was prevalent at that point of time? Now, the society at that point of time was characterized by feudalism. What is feudalism? The society is stratified on the basis of some status groups. The society had basically two classes. One class was the feudal lords, and another class was the serfs. The feudal lords, they were the dominant class. The serfs, they had to work for the feudal lords. Now, these serfs worked with the lords, and it was kind of hereditary. That means the feudal lords, they would have inherited these serfs. But the next generation of the feudal lords, for them, who's going to work? Again, the next generation of the serfs. So it continued like that. So serfs had to work for feudal lords, and this thing continued. It was hereditary. So what we're saying here is, the society was extremely closed. The economy was extremely closed. Society was extremely stratified. This kind of society, it gradually started breaking down from 13th century onwards. Over a period of time, you will see that there is emergence of capitalism, and this feudal society breaks down. That means the society which is divided along these classes, lords and serfs, it gradually gives way to society which has division along the lines of capitalist and proletariat, industrialist and the worker. And as we study further, you will see how this transition takes place. In fact, one of the prominent thinkers, Karl Marx, he also talks about it. In fact, we will discuss about historical liberalism, we will discuss about modes of production, we will discuss about class struggle, and in this series example, how feudal society gradually moves to capitalist society. But keep this thing in mind that this feudal society, that was the hallmark of European society of that period, it is gradually breaking down. Now, another thing is taking place here is the commercial revolution, global voyages and commercial revolution. And during this period, you observe one particular phenomenon, global voyages. So different explorers, they are now being commissioned by different kings and other people to carry out global voyages. Now these people, they are moving from one part of the world to another. They're trying to discover new territories. And all these things is promoted by different kings, different powers, different economic powers at that point of time. And this thing is indirectly leading to commercial revolution. Commercial revolution, this is basically what is commercial revolution? This is nothing but a series of events from the period 1450 to 1800. And during this period of time, economic activities, trade, commerce, they increase significantly. And they are all happening in an organized manner, in a large scale manner. That is the reason we're using the term revolution. A large scale commercial activities are taking place. So as a consequence of commercial revolution, multiple activities, multiple impacts on society is there. For example, there is rise of a new class, the middle classes. There is different changes in the economy as well. For example, the banking institutions, they are changing. Different kind of organizations you see, they are also changing. So global voyages are indirectly leading to commercial revolution, and we will see this point by point, commercial revolution, how it shapes up. Just wait for a few minutes, we'll come to that. But keep in mind, global voyages, they are shaping up the new kind of organization, the new kind of economy during this period of time. Now, another thing is also happening in the field of agriculture. There is capitalistic development of agriculture. There was enclosure movement. What was enclosure movement? The rich landlords, they are acquiring the land of the smaller farmers, and as a result of which, now they are cultivating on large farms. So they are getting the benefits of economy of scale, and they are becoming rich as a consequence of this. There is development of huge surplus. There is accumulation of great wealth, enormous wealth accumulation is there, and this also helps in the emergence of another class in society. There is also expansion of banking during this period. So expansion of banking, rise of new middle class, it can also be traced to commercial revolution. So these are the developments in the field of commerce, these are the developments in the field of agriculture. Apart from this, there is also development in the field of science. There was this Renaissance period as well. Now, scientific revolution is playing a very important role. The way you perceive science, that is also changing. In the feudal society, the church is playing the most important role. There are a lot of dogmas, and you cannot deviate from what the church has said. So if you are not able to deviate from all these pre-existing notions, there will not be any development in the field of science. There will not be any innovation. But over a period of time, you observe, especially in this period, 14th, 16th century, the perception towards science is now changing. Scientific reason, individualism, they are now giving importance. Individualism is very important. See, at this point of time, before this particular period, the society was collectivistic. So there will be certain common values, common norms. Everyone has to subscribe to those values, those norms. You cannot deviate from those norms. If you are deviating from the norms, there can be repercussions. But during this period, 14th to 16th century, individualism is gaining ground. That means individual is more important now. The role of individual is becoming more and more significant. An individual can talk about certain things which might go against the collective mindset. The level of tolerance is increasing to all these individualistic emotions. So scientific reason, individualism is gaining ground. There are developments in the field of biology. For example, dissection of the body is now allowed. If dissection of body is allowed, now you can understand the structure of the body, how different parts of the bodies are, part of the body is linked together. It is also helping in the development of sociology. How? Because the early sociologists, they now started viewing society just like an organism. Just like an organism is there, it is composed of multiple parts. Organism has different requirements. These parts are fulfilling the requirements, and these parts are connected with one another. Similarly, they are visualizing sociology. They are visualizing society. Society is a sum total of different subparts, and these subparts are fulfilling the needs of society. Every society has certain needs. These parts are fulfilling these needs. And again, these subparts are linked with one another, just like the different parts of the body are linked together. So dissection of body is again influencing the early day sociologists. Apart from the experimental methods, they are also coming up. So you are experimenting, and this is leading to development of science. So it is also influencing sociology. How? Because the early day sociologists, they wanted to fashion sociology just like a science. They also wanted to carry out experiments in the field of science, and accordingly, they would have created different theories, different generations. So experimental methods also impact sociology. So scientific revolution and Renaissance during 14th and 16th century, it is changing the way we view society, the way we view individual, the way we view science. And again, it indirectly impacts sociology later. When we discuss scientific revolution and Renaissance period in depth, don't worry about it. Now there are also some changes in the field of religion. There are reforms in the field of religion, and this period is also referred to as the Reformation period. Now, till this point of time, there was this fixation with the other world, with the outer world. Always the focus was on what we need to achieve after the death. But now there is a shift of emphasis. They're saying that whatever is there, it is there in this present world. Focus on that. Man is now becoming center of the universe. His welfare is now the prime concern. Don't just focus on the outer world, focus on the present world. That is what we are trying to say. So reformation period is also impacting. Sociology is also getting impacted because of it. Sociology is also emerging out of this concern. How? Now if I'm saying that man is the focus of the world at the present world, then man's welfare is also the main focus. What is man's welfare? It is nothing but social welfare. And what is social welfare? Sociology tries to ensure the welfare of society. So indirectly, the shift in focus is also helping in development of sociology, development of science of society. Apart from all these things, beginning of feudalism, commercial revolution, capitalistic development of agriculture, scientific development, Renaissance, reforms in the field of religion, there were some other major developments. For example, there was industrial revolution, there was French revolution, and then there was also the philosophy of enlightenment. So they are also impacting society, and later on they are also impacting sociology. So we'll discuss these important developments separately. Don't worry about it. We'll see what is industrial revolution, what is French revolution, what is philosophy of enlightenment. But before we go into this, we will understand what are some of the important concepts that we have discussed here. For example, what is commercial revolution, what is the scientific revolution, Renaissance. All these things we will cover in brief. Now we will look at some of the important developments that we just talked about. We'll look at them in details. So first thing that we will discuss is the commercial revolution. Now, this particular event, rather a series of events, spanned for a period of around 350 years. So, commercial revolution is referring to a series of events. And what are these series of events doing? They're basically converting a stagnant, subsistence-based economy to a more dynamic and a worldwide economic system. So, previously, the economy was for subsistence. You are just focusing on your daily requirements. But now it has become much more than that. It has become very dynamic. And different parts of the world, they're now getting connected. It has become a worldwide system. Just think about all these countries, the colonial powers and all these, and how they establish their colonies at different parts of the world. And how the markets are getting connected now. And some from the colonies are taking raw material, and then these raw materials coming to their own industries, and again they are sending back the products for selling it back to the colonies. So you are creating a worldwide system. Now, next question that you might have is why this term revolution is used. Commercial revolution, yes, there is some change in the field of commerce, there is some change in the field of economics, but why is it referred to as a revolution? Now, it's called revolution because all these things are happening at a very large scale, and they're happening in an organized manner. Both these things. So the way trade and commerce is expanding, all these things are in an organized manner and at a very large scale. So keep this in mind. But what is the reason why this commercial revolution comes into play? Why it happens? Now, all these things are a result of initiatives taken by certain European countries. Countries like Portugal, Spain, Holland, England, these are the countries which are playing the role. That is the reason commercial revolution is coming into play. But why are they taking the initiative? See, at that point of time, Italy was dominating when it comes to trade. Before this period of time, before commercial revolution, some cities, for example, cities like Venice, Genoa, let's call Genoa in Italy. So these were the places, they were the centers of the trade, and they were the ones who were dominating everything. What is happening here is the prices of these products, silk, spices, they're very expensive. They're all controlled by Italy. They're having a monopoly over it. So that is the reason other countries now, countries like Spain, Portugal, Holland, and England, they are now taking the initiative. Now they also want to break the monopoly of Italy. They also want to be engaged in these kind of trade so that they can control the prices of this trade. That is the reason now the focus is on discovering sea routes. Move away from land routes. Now we should discover more and more sea routes. And it is because of this that these explorers like Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus were given incentives. Find out the different sea routes. And what was the result of it? Vasco da Gama who discovered the sea route to India, Christopher Columbus who discovered the sea route to US. And it is now leading to expansion of different types of empires. So global voyages, they are leading to commercial revolution. And why global voyages? Who were the ones who were promoting global voyages? Who were the ones who gave incentives for global voyages? It was from rulers from these parts of the world, Portugal, Spain, Holland, and England. Now, during this commercial revolution, what are the changes that are taking place? What has been the impact of this commercial revolution? Now, when it comes to trade, what are some of the key results of it? Now, commerce, as I told you, became a worldwide enterprise. So you have colonies at some places, and these colonies are the places where you get raw material, you process it, and then you sell your processed products into their markets. Because of the increasing dominance of countries like England, Holland, etc., who played a very significant role in commercial revolution, the monopoly of Italian cities was challenged. And now another thing is happening. Because of increasing trade, because of trade and commerce becoming the world enterprise, European markets now are getting flooded with new commodities. The range of world trade is increasing. New items are being traded now. Apart from the traditional things, silk and spices, new things are also being traded now. And over a period of time, among these countries also, who were significant players in commercial revolution, among them also differences started. And some countries continued to dominate. Others they declined. Their trade price declined, their position, their relevance declined. For example, Portugal and Spain, for them there was a decline. Countries like England, Holland, France, they started dominating Europe as well as the entire world. So this was the consequence of commercial revolution. And at this point of time, some other things are also happening. For example, there is expansion of the banking sector. Credit facilities are getting expanded. More, it is easier to get credit now. Checks system that is now being invented. Paper money is now replacing gold and silver coins. New kind of organizations are coming up now. Growth of new kind of organizations. For example, regulated companies, joint stock companies, chartered companies. They are new kind of organizations now. Now, what is a regulated company? These kind of companies emerged in the 16th century. Here, these companies were formed by association of merchants. So they wanted together, they had some common economic objective, so they are coming together for their common venture. The joint stock companies also came into being 17th century, and they had large number of investors in them. And we are also seeing formation of chartered companies. What do you mean by chartered companies? Governments used to give charter. They should give some contracts to certain organizations that they are the only ones who can trade in a particular region. Example is British East India Company. So this is also happening. Expansion of banking apart from the formation of these new kind of organizations. One more thing you observe is there is a rise of the new classes. A new kind of class is coming into being, and they're playing an important role. These new classes are the middle classes, and they are the ones that are having economic power now. Merchants, bankers, ship owners, investors, they are the new classes, and they are becoming a very influential group by the end of 17th century. But thing here is they're having economic power. They're not having political power at this point of time. But gradually they're becoming the political power in the 19th century. So this new class, which is emerging in the beginning as a result of emergence of capitalism, they're gradually becoming a political power as well. Shift from an economic power to political power. Power is fungible. That thing is what we're observing. Also during this period of time, observe Europeanization of the world. The kind of culture that is prevalent in Europe that is getting transplanted to different other parts of the world. For example, in Asia and Africa, the same culture, same practices are being transplanted because of colonial rule, because of third world trade missionaries. So the world is getting Europeanized. So their customs are getting transferred to other parts. So this is what is happening during this period as a consequence of commercial revolution. So just keep in mind what is happening exactly. So how trade and commerce activities are taking place. There's expansion of these activities at a large scale and it is happening in an organized manner. What is the reason it is happening? Which are the countries which are playing the lead? And as a consequence of commercial revolution, over a period of time, what is happening? How Italy's dominance is decreasing. How certain countries, England, Holland, France, they started to dominate. Also, how societies are changing. How there is an emergence of new classes, middle classes. Apart from that, how the financial architecture, how the economic systems are also emerging. What kind of new financial instruments like check, paper money, they're becoming important. What kind of new organizations are coming. So this is about commercial revolution. One aspect of social change in Europe. How scientific revolution and Renaissance period they're impacting the development of sociology. How in fact how they are impacting society. This thing we are going to understand. Now, intellectual atmosphere, it plays an important role in development of science. Also, development of science can impact the attitudes and beliefs. Both the things are important. If the society is extremely collectivistic, those kinds of societies will not lead to development of science. Because the society is collectivistic, they do not accept any deviation from the norms. Or if there is any deviation, people might not accept it. They might question it, they might even stop these kind of ideas. So intellectual atmosphere is very important. If the kind of society that you are saying promotes reason, if the society promotes individualism, then they can develop in the field of science. So the first statement we're able to understand. And another thing, sometimes development in the field of science, they can also change the attitudes and beliefs of society. That is also important. Certain new discoveries can change your thinking process. So emergence of sociology in Europe, it owes a great deal to the ideas and discoveries contributed by science. So science is contributing to ideas which is indirectly leading to development of sociology. So we understand this part here. And before going into it, we need to understand what kind of society we had during that period of time. It was primarily a feudal society. The time during the medieval period, society during the medieval period was characterized by the feudal system. Church was at the center of power. Whatever you were learning, the content of the learning was primarily religious. There were multiple religious dogmas and beliefs, religious beliefs. You cannot question these beliefs. You have to accept these beliefs. And you cannot come up with daring ideas. The atmosphere, the intellectual atmosphere was such that you cannot come with ideas which can question the society at that point of time, or whatever was held by the society at this point of time. So development of science gets impacted. There cannot be scientific progress in such a scenario. And whatever development in science or technology will be there, it will be just demonstrate to improve the techniques of production. How to improve whatever you are trying to produce there. Apart from that, not much change will be there. This particular period, the scientific revolution period, this Renaissance period, is questioning all these things now. It is basically giving importance to individualism. It is basically giving importance to scientific reason. And it is questioning the existing, established old ideas. So what is happening in this period? What are the developments in this period? So we look at some of the most prominent developments during this period and how they are questioning the existing ideas. For example, in the field of visual arts, a scientific attitude, a scientific approach to nature and human body was developed. The minute details, the smallest of details in nature and human body was observed. In the field of medicine, dissection of human body became acceptable. Now doctors, people who are studying human anatomy, physiologists, they are able to understand each and every part separately. They're looking at it directly now. So this is indirectly leading to development in the field of anatomy, physiology, and pathology. In chemistry also there were different developments, general theories were developed. Processes like oxidation, reduction, distillation, evaluation, people started understanding them scientifically. One of the side effects of colonization was development in the field of navigation and astronomy. For colonization, we need to promote trade, and for that, for trade, we have to find out different sea routes. Sea routes are one of the convenient medium for trade. And indirectly, what we're trying to do when we're trying to promote trade to sea routes, we're promoting navigation. And again, navigation can be easier, can be better if you are becoming better at astronomy. So indirectly, colonization is leading to development of astronomy. And again, some of the important discoveries made. Vasco da Gama discovered in shows in 1498, Columbus discovered in America in 1492. So in the Renaissance period, these were certain changes. How we are approaching art, how we are approaching medicine, how we are approaching chemistry, how we are approaching navigation, astronomy, that is changing. Now another important development in this period was Copernican revolution. Now Nicholas Copernicus, he proposed a theory, heliocentric theory, and it stood in opposition to the prevailing theory, the geocentric theory. What do we mean by heliocentric theory? What do we mean by geocentric theory? The geocentric theory that was prevalent at that point of time was the world that we inhabit. That is the center. That means Earth is the center, everything is around it. But Copernicus, he's saying, no, Earth is not at the center, it's the sun which is at the center. So from the Earth being a center to the sun being the center, and again, Earth is a part of it. This particular change is also a huge difference. It is basically altering whatever we had thought till this point of time. Your thought patterns are getting changed. You always assume that the Earth, the human being, is the center of the universe. But now you just realize that you are just one part of this huge universe, a very small part of it. So from being center, you are a small part of it. So it is basically shattering all the foundations that were there at that point. The base is now shaking. This was also a very important development during this period of time. And some other major developments here. One of the most prominent development was the usage of experimental methods in physics and maths. Galileo, Kepler, Isaac Newton, they started using experimental methods. Now through experimental methods, they started challenging the old ideas that were there and suggested different alternatives. That is also impacting society. There were developments in the field of biology. Now dissection of human body, that was more acceptable. So because dissection of human body is more acceptable, you can understand the different parts of the body. You are able to find out different systems in the body, how the blood gets circulated in the body. This is what the having. Now human organism is being viewed as a system which has again multiple parts. A system which has different subparts, and these subparts are all interrelated, they're all interconnected. And this notion that organism consists of smaller parts, and these smaller parts have some role to play, some functions to play, and these functions are fulfilling the requirements of the organization. And again, these parts are interconnected has a very important influence on sociology, especially on thinkers like Spencer. So they also started relating society with organisms. So they feel that just like an organism, society is also having smaller subparts. These subparts are fulfilling the requirements and needs of the society, and they're all linked together, they're all networked together, they're all interconnected. So developments in biology is also influencing sociology. Another very significant development was the development of the concept of evolution, discovery of the concept of evolution. British evolutionist, British naturalist Charles Darwin, he wrote the book Origin of Species in 1859. He's saying that the amount of resources in Earth is limited, and various living organisms on Earth, they try to compete for these resources. There's always a fight among these organisms for survival. And he's saying that only the fittest survive. There's always the survival of the fittest in this competition for scarce resources. And since they are competing with each other, as a consequence, they try to improve over a period of time. Certain traits among them starts becoming better and better. The species evolve, they will develop certain traits, and this in turn is making the survival possible. Other species will gradually die out. The weaker ones will die out. He's also studying human evolution. The name of his work is Descent of Man. So he's tracing the origin of human species. And he feels that human beings evolved from ape-like ancestors. And this is now changing the perception of people. This is now creating huge uproar over there. See, till this point of time, it was always believed that God created man in his own image. But now you're saying man is evolved from monkey or some ape-like species. So again, this is a drastic departure from the past. There was a huge uproar. The conservatives are not willing to accept it, but there are different other sections who are willing to accept it. And this thing in biology, this discovery in biology, is also having a very huge influence on sociology as well, development of sociology. Now many thinkers, they subscribe to this idea. They feel that society also evolves like that. Among everything, societies also, between societies also, there can be this kind of phenomena, competition, all these things can happen. And over a period of time, societies evolve from one stage to another. So evolutionary thinkers are using this. Initially classical evolutionists are using it, later on other thinkers, they also taking up this approach. So the concept of evolution also plays a very important role in development of sociology later on. Now we will discuss three major developments during this period, 17th and 18th century period. So first major development was the Industrial Revolution. And this Industrial Revolution, these concepts you might have heard about it, you might have read about it. In our social studies text also, school textbooks, they also mention about Industrial Revolution. Now also we talk about Industrial Revolution, how the differences between countries right now, developed countries. Sometimes these stories are also there. That some countries they had Industrial Revolution, they were the ones who started Industrial Revolution, and they are still having their own. So those kind of theories are still prevalent. They did have these debates. Now also this Industrial Revolution is significant, and at that point of time it was even more significant. So we try to understand what is Industrial Revolution, how it started, and how it is impacting society. What are the different themes of Industrial Revolution, and how it is leading to development of sociology. So Industrial Revolution, it is beginning around 1760 in England, and gradually it spreads to other parts of Europe. And Industrial Revolution, it was a development in the field of technology, factory mode of production, but it is not only impacting the economic life of the people, but it is also impacting the social life of the people. So there are changes in the society as well as economy, and it is again further leading to other developments. For example, development of new territories, it fueled exploration, it fueled the growth of trade and commerce. It is also leading to urbanization, consequent growth of towns. It increased demands, and goods were now started to be produced in large scale. These were some of the features of Industrial Revolution. But how it is all starting? What are the ways by which it took up? So during this period, during the period of 1760 to 1830, there are a lot of inventions. We will see some of these inventions and what are happening as a result of these inventions. Now, during this period, 1760 to 1830, new tools and techniques are coming to produce goods at large scale. It's leading to factory mode of production, factory system of production. Previously, production was primarily within the households, those kind of production at a very small scale. But now the equipments are so large that there have to be separate places where you can keep those. So factory mode of production is coming to be. Gradually, the economy is also shifting. It was primarily feudal economy, divided along the lines of feudal lords themselves. Now it has become the capitalist economy, industrialist and the workers, capitalist and the proletariat. That is the division in the society right now. So new class of capitalists, new class of workers, they are coming up. Sometimes they are also referred to as industrialist and proletariat. Now previously, we used to have handmade goods, now you're having machine-made goods, and this is the emergence of Industrial Revolution. Some of the important inventions at this point of time. Spinning jenny was invented by James Hargreaves, 1767. Arkwright's water frame, it was invented in 1769. Arkwright was an English barber, and the equipment that he is designing, it is huge. It cannot be kept within the household. So you have to have separate mechanisms, separate places where you have to keep it. It is really difficult. Mule was invented by Samuel Crompton in 1779. Again, mule is also used for spinning yarn. So these were the major inventions at this period of time. Now what is happening? What is the consequence of Industrial Revolution on the society? Now it is leading to development of banks. It is leading to development of insurance companies. It is leading to development of financial corporations. New class is emerging. Capitalists, workers, and also the managers. New class is trying to manage these firms. They are the managers. There is increase in population. How there is an increase in population as a consequence of Industrial Revolution? Now if production is increasing, it can also sustain a larger population. So it will lead to increase in population. And again, you might have read about the different theories, the theories of demographic transition. Maybe you have covered this in the population chapter in General Studies paper 1. You might have read about it. How if technology improves, the death rate goes down. And if the death rate will go down, again it will lead to increase in population. And also as a consequence of Industrial Revolution, there is an increase in the rate of urbanization. So people are shifting from the rural areas to urban areas to work in these factories. Also, there is a widening of socio-economic disparities. This is also being observed here. The difference between the capitalists and the industrialists that is increasing over a period of time. These things are also pointed out by many thinkers. Thinkers like Karl Marx. He says that there is gradual pauperization. The workers are becoming pauperized. They are becoming poorer by the day. Now factory workers, they are now involved in different kind of repetitive work. The same work have to be repeated for the markets. And as a consequence of this, they can become alienated from the product. So previously, a man used to produce something. So whatever he's producing, he's the one who has ownership of the product, and that person can sell the product. He can take the decision what kind of product he has to produce. If he's working in the fields, he can cultivate these crops and he can decide what kind of crops need to cultivate. So he's the one who is basically producing that thing. He's the person who is owning that thing, and he can sell it and he can take all the decisions related to it. But now what is happening? In a factory, a man is working, but he's not working for himself. He's basically working for someone else. He has no say, a very limited say on the process, what kind of process has to be followed. He cannot decide. Someone else is deciding. The capitalist, the owner of the factory is deciding. And again, once he has created that product is not his. It belongs to the owner of the product. So in this process, he gets alienated. He gets separated from his product. He gets separated from the product of his own labor. Now city life is becoming altogether a different way of life. The kind of life that we have in rural areas is different. The kind of life we have in urban areas is completely different. And the kind of living conditions that they are observing in the cities. What is happening? Women and children, they also working for 8 hours a day. They're working every day. And because there is an increase in population, all of a sudden, now slums have come up, and there is no hygiene or sanitary practice in the slums. It is leading to different kind of diseases. So life has become very, very difficult. And city life is again characterized by other issues. The relations that everybody has in personal. You don't have those personal equations that in the villages. So city life is changing, and it is not something which is very good. So this is moving both the conservative thinkers as well as the liberal thinkers. So people at that point of time, the intellectuals at that point of time, those who are referred to as thinkers, they are all getting impacted by all these things, the changes that are happening. Those who are conservatives, they feel that these kind of situations, these kind of conditions can lead to chaos and disorder. So these kind of problems can emerge. Those who are the radicals, for example, thinkers like Angels, they feel that the condition that factory workers are subjected to, it can initiate social transformation. Radical, that means you're trying to change things. So since you have been pushed to the periphery, you have been exploited, now you bring about some social transformation. You hear from the workers. So they are different in their opinions. Conservatives think it can lead to chaos and disorder. Radicals think that it can change society. So there's a difference. But both of them are agreeing that Industrial Revolution is bringing about huge changes, epoch-making impact on the society. Now, at this point of time, different themes are emerging. Different themes along which there are different thoughts, different points of view. So what are the significant thoughts that are emerging during this period? So the first important thing that is emerging is the condition of labor. Now, the society was characterized by poverty at this point of time. The workers were poor. Now, there was a consensus that the kind of poverty that exists among the workers, it is not something natural. It is a social poverty, a poverty created by the society. It is not something natural, or on its own it is not happening. So that is the reason these workers, these laborers, they became a subject of moral and analytical concern. Another significant theme that was running at this point of time was the transformation of property. Land is losing its value. Capital is becoming more important. The feudal landlords that were there, so they are becoming less significant now. So they are suffering different kind of losses. New capitalists, they are gaining power. Society has changed now. Society had different kind of classes. Previous society had feudal lords themselves. New society has capitalists and the workers. So feudal lords used to dominate the previous society. Now it's the capitalists who are dominating. And since this property system is changing, it is changing the fundamental character of the society. So the sociologists at this point of time, they have to face these kind of questions. They now want to understand these property relations. They now want to understand how property and stratification is linked to them. How because of the change in the property relations, how the system of stratification will impact. What do we mean by stratification? How the society divides into different kind of classes. So since there's a transformation of property system, there will be formation of new kind of classes. So they want to understand what are the new kind of classes or how these new kind of classes will be shaped. So impact of social stratification is something that sociologists want to study. The next significant theme is the city, the industrial city. As a consequence of industrial revolution, industries are growing, and as industry will grow, around that cluster of population will also come up. People will start working in these industries, those they will start staying in industries. The previous cities that were there, they were the centers of culture. The cities of Rome, Greece. So they were known for their civilizational values. But the new cities that you see, they're nothing but repositories of misery and humanity. So that's sad that poverty is one of the characteristic features of the societies. So now sociologists are also grappled with these questions. They're asking these questions: how the character of the city has changed. The cities that are forming right now, they do not reflect the cities that we had in the past. They're completely different. Now another significant thing is technology and factory system. And both the kind of thinkers, the conservative thinkers, the radical thinkers, they realize that these things, technology and factory system, they're altering human life. They're changing human life for all the time to come. They're realizing that it's having an impact on women, children, family. They're all getting impacted. Just imagine at that point of time, you do not have these labor rights initially. So women and children are also working in factories. The notion of childhood that we have right now, at present, we have these child labor acts, according to which those who are below the age of 14, they are not supposed to work. And also the age of 15 to 18, they can work, only in a non-hazardous occupation. But these notions of childhood, that a child cannot work in factory, that was not there at that point of time. Everyone was working, they were working every day, and they will be working 16 hours a day, that kind of working conditions were there. And this is also impacting the family system. Previously, you had extended families. There's a gradual shift towards nuclear families. So technology and factory system, how they are bringing about changes in different institutions. So that is also something which sociologists wanted to study. So the concerns that industrial revolution is raising, that is also becoming the subject of the sociologists already. How laborers are poor, how they are poor because of social poverty, not because of natural poverty. How the property equations are changing, and since property equations are changing, how there is an impact on the stratification system, how society will divide into classes, how the idea of city has now changed. New cities are formed, but they are no longer the centers of culture. They are no longer the centers of civilization. They are rather repositories of misery. So that is also something what the sociologists want to study. And what is the impact of all these things on different social institutions? So these were the significant themes of industrial revolution. The next important development during this period was the French Revolution. French Revolution had a long-term impact on society. It also not only the society of France but also societies world over. Initially, European countries, other countries also getting impacted. And since society is getting impacted, it is also influencing many of these sociologists. It is one of those events which is very important in the development of sociology. As we proceed, you will find that many of the thinkers they have been indirectly or directly influenced by French Revolution. So if you discuss about French Revolution, one thing here, French Revolution you will also come across in just paper Wall Street. So whatever you are learning there, try to relate it with this. They will learn about the specific events in French Revolution because you're trying to study history there. Specific events will be there. So try to understand the significance of these events. Here you will see how it is having long-term impact on emergence of sociology. Now, French Revolution, what is it? It is said that it was one of the turning points in history when it comes to human beings' struggle for freedom and equality. It is sounding the death bell for feudalism. It is bringing in a new order in the society. The feudal society is coming to an end, a new kind of society will be forming. That is leading to far-reaching changes in not only France but also in Europe. The ideas like liberty, fraternity, equality, these ideas are becoming more important now. These kind of concepts are also part of our own constitution. So look at it from that perspective also. Now, what happened exactly during French Revolution? What was the reason which led to French Revolution? Not the society that was there, the French society. It was a highly stratified society, and this stratification was on the basis of status groups. What were the different kind of groups that were prevalent in France at that point of time? The society was divided into three estates: the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. Now, the first estate consisted of the high clergy. They lived a life of luxury. They were not much bothered about religion. They were more concerned about acquiring power, or they were more involved in politics. They preferred a life of politics to religion, and some of them were taken to drinking, some of them were gambling. So very luxurious life and a wasteful life they used to live. Now, the second estate, it consisted of the nobility, the nobles. Now again, here you have two kinds of nobles: the nobles of the sword and nobles of the robe. So the nobles of the sword were the big landlords. In principle, they should protect the people, but generally they were the parasites. So in their land, someone else will be working, the peasants will be working, and they will basically live off the hard work of the peasants. But they had a very extravagant lifestyle. They lived with pomp and show. So this is the noble of the sword. Then another kind of division in society was the nobles of the robe. The nobles of the robe, they were not nobles by birth, but they were nobles by title. Those were the magistrates, those were the judges. And among them, there were certain people who were extremely progressive. They were not conservative. They were very liberal, and they also helped in the French Revolution. So basically, they supported the third estate against the first and the second estate. Now, what is the third estate? The third estate consisted of the existing part of the society. It included primarily the peasants, but also it included merchants, artisans, these people. And there was a huge difference in the condition of the third estate and the condition of the first and the second estate. They were overloaded with multiple taxes. It was very difficult to survive. The first and the second estate, they really paid tax. But these are the people, the third estate, they had to pay all the tax. And they're paying taxes, but they don't have any power. So if I'm paying taxes, ideally I should also be able to take decisions on behalf of me. If I'm paying money, that means I should be able to take decisions which impact my life. But that was not happening. So they did not have any power. They were just paying money. And among the third estate, there was also one section, especially these merchants and all these people, they were the middle classes. They were referred to as the bourgeois. There's no doubt on the spelling of bourgeois. Sometimes they get confused. It is pronounced like this, bourgeois. Now, middle classes, as the bourgeois, they were also part of third estate. Their condition was better than the peasants over here. And one thing here, the bourgeois' life was improving because there was improvement in the field of trade and commerce. They were engaged in these kind of activities. But so they're having economic power. If they want to ensure that their trade and commerce continues like this, or they want to expand it further, they need to access political power. So they're not politically that significant now. They're economically significant. They want more political power. During 1720 to 1789, there was escalation in the prices. There was huge inflation, and it is leading to increase in prices by 65%, and it is impacting the peasants a lot. So this is how the society is divided. And again, these stratification is a status-based stratification. The states are status-based stratification, and there is huge disparity between them. Some are enjoying a very luxurious life, while someone else is paying for it. Taxes are paid by the third estate, second and the first estate, they don't pay much tax. And if you look at the inequality that exists, peasants, they constitute 80% of the total population, but they own just 30% of the land. But these people, the first estate, the second estate, they constitute just 2% of the population, but they own around 35% of the land. So this was the kind of inequality that exists during the French society. Now we look at some of the political aspects and the economic aspects of the French society. What kind of political structure was there in the French society? Society had absolute monarchies. There was this view that king is the authority ordained by the god. So basically, God wants to rule through the king, so he has the divine right to rule. That is the reason you have these absolute monarchies. Also, there was no distinction between the income of the state and income of the king. There was no difference. Whatever is income of the state, the income of the state was his own income. 200 years, the kings of the Bourbon dynasty had been ruling over France. Ordinary people did not have any rights. There will not be any trial. And the laws, they were also very flexible. They were not same. They were not same throughout the country. They were from region to region. What was the economic aspect of the French society? The different kings from Louis XIV onwards, they fought different kind of wars, costly wars. Because of their fighting costly wars, the common man was getting impacted. Louis XV kept on borrowing money from the bankers. Louis XVI was very weak and ineffective. It was during his time that Queen Marie Antoinette had used a particular proverb when people were protesting, people did not have sufficient food with them, so they had gone to the Queen. And the Queen said that if you do not have bread, why don't you eat cake? She herself had a very extravagant life, but for commoners, she had said if you don't have bread, why don't you eat cake? So she was just making mockery of their financial position, economic position. So this was the condition of the French society, the political condition, and the economic aspect of French society. Now, what was this French Revolution, and what did it lead to? French Revolution was a kind of revolution which sounded the death bell for the monarchy at that point of time. Abolition of French monarchy, and it is leading to establishment of a secular and democratic republic. But over a period of time, what is happening is this republic is also becoming authoritarian, is also becoming militaristic. There was also a radical change in the society, and this change was on the basis of liberalism and the other thoughts that were provided by the Enlightenment thinkers. There is this death of feudal society, absolute monarchy is coming to an end. So there is this victory of the middle classes. The traders, the merchants, bankers, professionals, the bourgeois, they will now become the predominant section of society. They will become the dominant class of society. It is a blow to the tradition, it's a blow to the power of the church. There's now separation of church and politics. A major part of the nobility was destroyed. Those who were part of the second estate, they destroyed. How they destroyed? One prominent mechanism was guillotine. What is guillotine? They were killed. So there was guillotine as a kind of device through which people are killed. So many of them were subjected to guillotine. Other way by which the large part of the nobility becomes weak or they become insignificant, their land is taken away. And the ideas that were predominant in the French Revolution, the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity, they are now carried to different parts of Europe, and gradually they are carried to other parts of the world as well. So French Revolution is impacting society in this manner. These are changes in the French society, and because of this, there is a huge transformation now. The property relations, they are again getting transformed. Feudalism is giving way to capitalism. There is huge disorder in the society. There is change in the social and the social political economic structure, and there is emergence of new classes. There are the bourgeois, they are emerging, the middle classes, they are emerging. These transformations in society, these transformations in the property relations, how society has become more disordered, how they change in the political economic structure, is inspiring different traditions in sociology. Now, one group of thinkers, they are now focusing on disorder. So they want to understand how order can be created, how society can be made more stable. They're focusing on traditions. They are considering society as a system of parts. So these kind of thinkers are referred to as the conservative thinkers. Now, another group of thinkers, they are now focusing on the problem of inequality, the problem of conflict, social change. So these are the radical thinkers. So two main traditions of sociology are emerging as a consequence of this. So conservative and the radical thinkers. So this way, sociology is getting impacted, or sociology is getting benefited because of French Revolution. So another very important development during this period was the philosophy of enlightenment, 18th century period. Again, this particular development is also impacting French Revolution. So many of the ideas in French Revolution have also been impacted by the philosophy of some of these thinkers. So what we will do is we will look at some of the important concepts which are proposed at this point of time, some of the important thinkers, and again how it is going to impact sociology and emergence of sociology. Montesquieu, he's talking about his theory, or his work was the spirit of the law, and he talked about the theory of separation of power. Power should not be concentrated with one authority. So you should have different divisions, executive, legislative, judicial. Among them also there should be system of checks and balances. In politics also, you will be reading about it in case you have not read till now, and you understand in India also how there is this, how this concept of separation of power is present. Apart from that, he gave importance to the liberty of an individual. Another prominent thinker was Locke, he was an Englishman, and he's saying that every individual has certain rights. These rights are inalienable. They cannot be taken away by any authority. For example, certain rights like right to live, right to property, right to personal freedom. These rights every individual should enjoy. If any ruler is taking away these rights, that ruler needs to be thrown out of power. He has to be removed from the seat of power. Another important thinker was Voltaire. He's advocating religious tolerance. He's advocating freedom of speech. He's also talking about the rights of individual. And all these things can be there if you are having freedom of speech and expression. So freedom of speech and expression is also very important. Apart from Voltaire, Rousseau, he came up with the concept of social contract. Now what do we mean by social contract? So at some point of time, people in the society will not be having the concept of the state. It will, and you will not have rights, you will not have rules and regulations. But then at some stage of development, they would have come with a contract among themselves, and in that contract, they would have given up some of their rights to a new institution that they're creating, the state. So basically, state will take away some rights of the people, and in return, it will guarantee them some rights. So that is the meaning of social contract. And people of the country, they have the right to choose the sovereign who's going to rule over them. And Rousseau is saying that people can develop their full potential. People can develop their personalities only when the government is of their choice. So people have the right to choose their government, and they can develop their full potential only if they are able to choose their own government. So these are some philosophies, but these are not necessarily the only philosophies. There are other thinkers as well. Edison, Smith, Ferguson. So different thinkers were there during this period. And this period is known as, again, this entire development is known as the philosophy of enlightenment. Now, how it is impacting the development of sociology, that is what we are concerned with. Now, how philosophy of enlightenment is impacting sociology. Now, till that point of time, there were certain notions that if the society is doing good, it is because of human beings. If society is doing bad, because humans are evil. Now, enlightenment thinkers are basically changing this notion. They feel that we can understand the patterns of society. And if we are able to understand the patterns of society, then we can alter society. And if we are able to alter society, we can impact human action. So, the way enlightenment thinkers are perceiving society or viewing society is different now. Another very important development here is enlightenment and also French Revolution, they're discovering society. What do we mean by this? See, till this point of time, what used to happen was the intellectuals at any period, any stage, they will primarily focus on the aristocratic classes, they focus on the king, the nobility, they will not talk about the common people. But enlightenment thinkers are now talking about the common people. So the shift has happened now. The shift is the main subject of discussion is not the king or the nobles, it is the common people. So society in a way is getting discussed now. They're now becoming the focal point. So as a consequence, what is happening? There is a renewed interest in society, and it also leads to development of sociology. Now, enlightenment is laying the foundation for the scientific approach to the study of society. At this point of time, you are realizing that there are different scientific developments. If you are discovering physical laws, you are able to control different physical phenomena. If developments in physical sciences, natural sciences, physics, chemistry, biology can control the biological process, chemical process, if laws in physics, chemistry, biology can control processes concerning these disciplines, we can also control society if you are able to discover the social laws. And once we have discovered social laws, what we can do, we can predict the future, we can also control the society. For example, if I have discovered a law related to chemistry, so I know how a particular chemical process can be controlled. If it can be controlled, it can also be predicted. All these things will go hand in hand. Similarly, if you discover social laws, you can also ensure predictability of society, you can also control society. So these ideas are given by the progressive group. But at the same time, there is another group, the conservatives. They advocate that we need to promote peace, harmony, order in the society. And sociology is basically getting advanced because of both these people. So what are sociologists trying to do? They're trying to adopt the goals of the conservatives, that we need to have order, harmony, peace, but they are also adopting the methods of the progressive group. So we are trying to go for a scientific study of society. And sociology is nothing but the scientific and systematic study of social forces of society. So enlightenment thinking is basically promoting us, or promoting the intellectuals of the day to understand the patterns of society so that we can alter society. It is also increasing the interest, it is shifting the interest of the society to the common people. Progressive group, the ideas of the progressive group is now to find out different laws, and that laws can be used to understand society and control society, society. Conservatives, they want to preserve the peace, harmony, and order. All these things are going together, and it is leading to emergence of sociology. Now, apart from these three major developments, industrial revolution, French Revolution, and enlightenment, there are some other intellectual influences which affected the emergence of sociology during this period. For example, the concept of the philosophy of history. Here, the basic assumption is the society must have progressed through a series of steps from being a simple society to a complex society, from simple stage to complex stage. On the side of philosophy, it has contributed to the notions of development and progress, and on the scientific side, it has contributed to the concepts of historical periods and social types. So, one intellectual influence is the philosophy of history. Organism evolves over a period of time. Now, another important intellectual influence is the biological theory of evolution. Many of early sociologists, they were influenced by this theory, and they tried to understand society through evolutionary approach. They wanted to model society in terms of biology. They felt that you can compare society with an organism, and just like organisms evolve over a period of time, similarly society also evolves over a period of time. So prominent thinkers like Spencer and Durkheim talk about it, and they will come across this theory again and again as we proceed. When we talk about thinkers, we'll see these things. Another intellectual influence was the survey of social conditions. One very important of modern sociology. Now, this is significant because of two reasons. Now, there was this growing conviction that methods that are there in natural science, they can be directly applied to study human affairs. Just like in physics, you observe something from outside, and from that, you can carry out different experiments, and again, from that you make your own laws, and you use those laws to predict things, you control things. So there was a growing conviction that society can also be treated in the same manner. So we can create a science of society which is very much like the natural sciences. So one assumption was this. Another assumption was that this human affairs can be classified and measured. So both these things were assumption, and they felt that the poverty that existed at that point of time was not natural but social. And sociological was the principal method to survey social conditions. So it was felt that if you are able to acquire knowledge about the social conditions, you can arrive at solutions to different kinds of social problems. So survey social conditions, from that you arrive at solutions, and then you solve social problems. And the underlying assumption here is all these things can be classified and measured, and just like use the methods of natural sciences, physical sciences, same thing can be applied for society. So this is again another intellectual influence affecting the emergence of sociology. So all the influences that we have talked about, all the major developments that we have seen, see, all these things are impacting the early day sociologists. You will find all these things getting reflected in the works of Weber, Marx, all these people. So what is happening here is all the developments that we talked about, industrial revolution, French Revolution, Enlightenment, these intellectual influences, and before that, how the French society is changing, how the European society is changing. They are basically raising different kind of questions. Now we have to find out answers to these questions. We have to find out ways by which we can solve these issues. So to answer those questions, to solve these issues, a new kind of discipline is emerging over a period of time. So this new kind of discipline is sociology, and this discipline is trying to understand society through a scientific manner. So sociology is nothing but a systematic scientific understanding of society. So all these influences that we saw, all the major developments that we saw, they are directly or indirectly contributing to the emergence of sociology as a discipline in itself. So this is about the first session, modernity and social change in Europe and the emergence of sociology. Over a period of time, we'll go deeper into it. We'll understand what is the scope of the subject. Once sociology has emerged, there are also a lot of criticisms. Some people are not accepting that sociology is a separate discipline. So some people are questioning that sociology and psychology, they are the same thing. Why is creating a separate discipline of sociology? These questions were also raised gradually. So in the next sessions, we will see what is the scope of sociology. We'll also see how sociology as a discipline is different from all the other social sciences. Because you might also feel that yes, sociology is studying this part, but in the same thing, economics might also be studying, history might also be studying, history might also be studying these changes in society, psychology might also be studying some of these things. So over the next couple of sessions, you will realize that yes, sociology and these social sciences might have something in common, but at the same time, they are also distinct disciplines. So we will continue with our discussion in sociology. Thank you.